Hello, everybody, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for Wednesday, February 10th, 2021. On today's episode, we're going to discuss what we've been up to at the water cooler. This is Slash Film Editor-in-Chief Peter Sciretta, and joining me on today's podcast is Slash Film Managing Editor Jacob Hall.
Hello, hello.
Senior Writer Ben Pearson.
Hey, what's going on?
And writers Hoai-Tran.
Hey, everyone.
And Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
Okay, so Brad is out again. We do expect him back next week, so look forward to, all the stuff he's been eating and doing then. But let's jump into it, and let's start with what we've been doing. And I actually have been very active this week. I've been out and about recording some videos for Ordinary Adventures, but I did some interesting things that I've never done before that I want to talk about here. I went to Frank & Son's Collectibles show here in Southern California. It's a little bit north of Anaheim. It's right near the Puente Hills Mall, which is the mall, the Twin Pines Mall from Back to the Future. Ben, when you were living in Los Angeles, did you ever visit Frank & Son's?
I did not. I visited the Twin Pines Mall, but never this collectibles show.
Guys, did you know in Back to the Future when he hits the tree and he comes back to the present, it's Lone Pines Mall? No one has ever pointed this out before. I hope someone talks about this. Anyway, continue.
Thank
Peter.
God for TikTok for teaching us these things.
Chris, did you know that Kevin McAllister, the plane tickets get knocked into the trash and then
what? Holy shit! I hope someone points this out. Anyway,
did you know that Disney recycles animation?
That's what? Man, this show is full of shocking revelations. Anyway.
Okay, in the late 80s, this guy named Frank and his son started this collectible show that I think they ran a trucking business. So they had a warehouse, and basically on the weekends they would have this collectible show where, booths would get set up kind of like Comic-Con, but more of the mom and pop shops selling t-shirts and Funko Pops and those kind of things. And it would be held every weekend in this warehouse that had no air conditioning, and it was a trucking warehouse with those yellow lights and whatever. And this thing grew over the years to become a big thing here in Southern California. It's called the Frank & Son's Collectibles Show. They recently have moved to a new location. They've taken over a much bigger space. They're in a spot that was previously used as a Sam's Club. So if you know how big a Sam's Club is. And every Friday, Saturday, and Wednesday, they are open. And it's basically like a, mom and pop Comic-Con. It's like a collectible flea market. You can get anything from, Pokemon cards to Funko Pops to, sideshow collectible statues, action figures, all that whole gambit of stuff. I had never been there. Everybody had always told me about it, and I know that they had reopened during the pandemic with a very, very limited capacity. I think it's like 20% of what it normally is, and it's also a massive building. So I had seen some videos and stuff and felt safe about going there. And we recorded a video for Ordinary Adventures, which will be out, I think, next week or something like that. But it was, I can't tell you guys how much being there almost made me emotional, because I didn't have Comic-Con this year, I didn't have Designer Con, didn't have LA Comic-Con. I didn't know I missed walking down the aisles and looking at art and looking at old action figures. I didn't know that was going to be something that that I really cared about that much. I didn't end up buying much, so it's not I ended up finding anything that was really connected to me and spent money. But if you're in Southern California, you might want to check out Frank & Son's Collectible Show. It turns out if you're in Southern California and you're a geek, you probably have already been here. I'm the last person that has gone to this place, but I recommend it. And they do run a very safe show. There's people around making sure that everybody's wearing masks and physically distancing and all that kind of stuff. And they also the family that runs this thing has over the years bought a lot of collectibles, and strangely some stuff from old McDonald's and Toys R Us's and stuff like that. So the Sam's Club is kind of decked out in like all these like collectibles, and I guess Frank was a NASCAR driver or something, or maybe he sponsored NASCARs or something. So there's like these NASCARs like in the back, and I don't know. It's a it's a really strange thing that I feel like shouldn't exist, but I recommend checking it out. Even now or even after the pandemic, and now I think it's actually better because like it is it's like Comic-Con um before they open the doors. Do you know what I mean? Where you see like some vendors walking around, but it's not like crowded aisles. So it's very, very chill. Anyways, the other thing I did this week is for another video, I went to the Funko store in Hollywood because they recently launched this Pop Yourself thing, which is they're doing it at the Funko Hollywood store, and they're doing it at the Funko headquarters in Everett, Washington, right outside of Seattle. And what it is you can go to these two locations and customize your own Funko Pop. So you choose the head, which has a variety of different colors to it, or different, eyelashes or no eyelashes. You get to choose the, what color, what style of hair out of, I want to say like 60 different options or something like that. You get you can choose a top, you can choose a bottom with legs, you can choose accessories for your character to be holding. There's so many choices right now because of COVID. They are doing this, I guess it's really popular, and before the store opens, we got there I think like 2 hours before the store opens. There was a line down the street, so a physically distanced line, but there was a line down the street. So this is like something that's popular, and if you don't get there within an hour of the store opening, you're not going to get one for the day. And you get this virtual time to come back to the store, and they're not doing this in the store. In normal times, you'd be in the store, and there's like this whole section of the store where like it's a Funko Pop factory where you'd actually assemble the pieces yourself and see what they look like and put them together. But because of COVID, and all the touching stuff, even though I feel like surfaces have been less of a problem, CDC wise, they they're doing this. They're having you fill out a form, and then the employees inside are actually building the Funko Pop for you. So they've set up these sections outside the store of like for you to just see all the different pieces, and you have room. Like there's not a ton of people around you, and you are basically filling out this card with, I want the B2 head, I want the H7 body, I want that whatever. um it's not optimal, and I will say this, a friend of ours did this, and it's kind of a shame that you can't like test it out, and actually when you buy it and it's given to you, it's non-returnable. So a friend of ours did this, and like one of the pieces like had like a discoloration, and she couldn't return it. And also like she got like a pop for her boyfriend, which like she got like a big beard for the pop for her boyfriend, and the beard is like so big it covers up the top half of his body. And it's something that like if you were piecing them together yourself, you would notice. But she was like, "Oh no, that's how big his beard is," and went on and picked the rest of the stuff. And so I think she's a little disappointed with how hers turned out. I'm very happy with how my Funko Pop turned out. I'll put a photo of that up on Instagram maybe next week sometime when we launch that episode. My one complaint I will give is that there isn't enough accessories for these things, because like they have every kind of sports thing. So you can have a baseball bat, a tennis racket, a golf club, all those kind of things. And there's things like ice cream cones and a book, and all sorts of accessories to like kind of personalize who you are as a person more. But for me, there was nothing that like no movie things of any kind. Like I thought maybe there'd be like a comic book, or maybe a camera, like any kind of camera. Actually, there's no camera for someone to hold. They have wands, like Harry Potter style wands, but they don't have lightsabers. So actually, when I was at Frankenson's, I bought a an old lightsaber from a action figure and gave it to my Funko Pop. So, anyways, it's cool. I would probably wait until after the when things get back to normal if you want to do one of these. And I think they actually have announced that sometime maybe this summer they're going to start doing this online where you can fill it out online and it'll get shipped to you. And it's cool. It comes in a box that has my name on it. So it comes in its own like Funko box, and it says Peter Sciretta on it. It says Funko Hollywood. It's pretty cool. But yeah, check out that video when it hits next week. And lastly, I just wanted to plug one video that is up right now that I recorded with Kitra. We did a video for Valentine's Day telling the story of how we met and answering questions about our relationship. It's gotten a lot of very positive feedback, and I thought maybe some people listening to this might be interested in a more personal story from me and Kitra. I'll link that in the show notes, but I am really proud of it because I think it is, yeah, it's good. Anyways, Jacob, what have you been up to?
It's been a real up and down week, Peter. Just lots of strange, mostly negative things happening this week, starting with my cat requiring surgery last week. He had a bladder stone, a massive bladder stone, needing to be surgically removed. Now he has to eat special food for the rest of his life, and he's an old cat, and he's grumpy. You often hear him in the background of this podcast. So that was very expensive and very sad and very scary. But on the plus side of things, I did not realize until recently, but under Texas's rules, I qualify for the current round of the COVID vaccine. So I hit refresh a bunch of times. It's a nightmare trying to get an appointment, but there are lots of places. There's an entire network that's been set up, like there are various Slack channels and group conversations of people keeping an eye out when reservations are opening up. And one opened up, and I got one for March, and I refreshed a few days later, and one opened up for this week. So I canceled the other appointment and got that one instead. And I had my first COVID vaccine injection yesterday. So if anyone has any questions about that,
wait, yeah, did it hurt?
It hurts a lot. At first it's just a needle, and right now my arm is incredibly sore. But I go back in a month. They're going to send me an email within the next 7 days to let me book my time. The crazy thing is, as much of a nightmare as getting the appointment was, and it was a huge nightmare, even with this, group helping people out and trying to spread the word about where the openings are. I have friends who were making bookings 3 hours away and driving to make sure they got it. And like I said, I got lucky to get one in Austin, and the actual process once you're there was incredibly streamlined and very efficient. They really had it down to a science. It was really amazing to see how many people were working to make it happen and make it happen quickly and efficiently. I just think that that's one thing that I hope the current administration fixes. There needs to be some kind of system to make reservations easier and to help people who are older and not like me, who know to refresh a page to find something. It's the tech wise, it's not easy, and that needs to be fixed like ASAP. So, but beyond that, I have it. In a month I'll have my second one, and I'm glad I did it. I know that it's different for all states. Like I know, for example, a friend of mine who is currently working in North Carolina but from Texas is eligible currently in Texas but not eligible in North Carolina. So it differs from state to state. You see, look into what your state is doing and what your health is and what health is applicable for the current rollout. And I was very fortunate. I was very lucky, and now I'm actually literally, as we're on this podcast, I saw some openings, forwarded them to a friend who got her mom on the list for this week. So it's all a network in Texas of people trying to help each other and make sure people get this. And I hope that the support systems are there for other states and other groups. And I hope that other states get their act together better than Texas has with its various different pages trying to refresh, trying to find something. Getting a vaccine to save your life and save the lives of others should not be like trying to get concert tickets. It's a mess. But I will say the volunteers on the ground actually doing it, truly amazing. But the overall system needs genuinely to be overworked and reworked if we're going to save a lot of lives.
Yeah, I'm so jealous, Jacob. I can't wait to get my vaccine. I've actually had a few friends that have been like, you read those articles about vaccine chasers. I have some friends that like are those vaccine chasers where they're going from place to place, like waiting in line, hoping that at the end of the day, because like if they don't use these vaccines, they go in the trash. So there's, they're not trying to take it from older people or, more deserving people. They're, waiting for the leftovers. And I've often thought like maybe I should join them on this hunt. But it is strange because in Texas I could get a vaccine right now. Like I qualify to get a vaccine in Texas, but I don't qualify to get a vaccine in California.
Yeah, I know. The thing is, I'm healthier than a lot of people who also qualify. But the thing is, as somebody who did qualify, I think it's a moral obligation to get as many vaccines, as many arms as possible. So I think some people may wonder why I got it when other people couldn't in other states, and if I should feel guilty about that. And the answer is, yeah, I think about that all the time. But I also feel like I was applicable. There was an appointment. There's another vaccine in an arm, and now I don't have to worry about bringing COVID when to my mom who could die from it. Even though she is also currently get the vaccine herself. So it's just me. It's a huge moral tightrope maze, whatever you want to call it, and it's one that I thought about really long and hard before making the choice that I was eligible, I had a chance, and I took it.
Yeah. Okay, HT, what have you been up to?
Also somewhat COVID related, but nothing so exciting as getting a vaccine. Well, actually, it was pretty exciting though. My friends got married and they hosted a virtual wedding, which I got to attend. And it was my first virtual wedding actually of the entire pandemic. But I was wondering if any of you guys have attended one of these virtual gatherings.
No.
Anyways, there was definitely a few technical hiccups, but it was a lovely quick ceremony, and I'm excited to see them in person at some point in the future. But I'm happy I at least got to see that ceremony take place, even if it was over a grainy Google Hangouts meet, which was probably not the best choice, even over Zoom. But I think that it was just really, I was really happy to see that happen, and that there wasn't a big hoopla that would potentially endanger people who had to travel there. So that's what I did this past weekend. And this coming weekend, or rather this coming Friday, I'm preparing for Lunar New Year. So Lunar New Year falls on February 12th on Friday. And this will be the first Lunar New Year that I will not be spending with family in some capacity. Last year, I spent it in New York, but I got to attend a dinner, like potluck, at my cousin's apartment, and that was really fun. But this year, because of circumstances, my cousins and I in New York will be doing a sort of drop-off potluck in which we'll be dropping off the dishes that we'll each cook at like a location that we'll all pick up for our own dinners, and then meet up over Zoom to have dinner together. And other things that I'm preparing for is, like, for Lunar New Year, you want to have a clean house, because one of the things for Lunar New Year, I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, is that you can't clean your house / apartment right in the first 2 weeks, I think, after New Year, because that means you're sweeping out the good dust or something like that. I don't really know exactly all of the details, but my mom has sent me very specific instructions to do on Lunar New Year, and one of which is I have to walk in very specific cardinal directions in my first trip outside. So if I walk in south east, I think I will have luck in terms of money, or no, I think in terms of love, and then which direction is for money? One of the directions for money. Money is direct east. So that is something I'll be doing and trying to figure out on Friday, which will be exciting. It's between like a specific time period too, so I have to step out and do that. But yeah,
is there a certain length, HT, that you're supposed to walk, like 50 feet, or like is it just take a couple steps, or like what's the protocol there?
I don't know, actually. Just kind of going with the flow, I guess.
What if you do it wrong? Are there consequences if you do it wrong?
The karmic consequences of the universe, I think.
Well, don't screw it up, HT, please.
No. But
I love how Chris thinks like a horror movie. Like, she's gonna do it wrong, and then it's gonna be a monkey paw situation.
I'm always waiting for something to go wrong.
It's like
That's
Final Destination if I don't do it right.
Yeah.
But my family did send us some Lunar New Year food, like bengchung, which is the sticky savory rice cake that we eat every year, and some of the lisi, which is the red envelopes filled with money, as well as some cards. So everyone is celebrating in spirit, at least, and I'll be happy to see them over Zoom, even if we can't spend it together. And I'll be very strictly walking in those cardinal directions and hopefully not screwing it up and getting like, I don't know, what is the Final Destination death? I don't know, electrocuted or something.
It has to be more complicated than electrocuted. It needs to be like a series. It's like one of those Rube Goldberg like series of events that like ends up with like you getting decapitated.
Oh gosh.
Sorry.
I hope I
Wow.
don't.
This got really dark. This pleasant conversation about Lunar New Year.
Well, no, but isn't that what Final Destination is at its best? Is like these like
yeah, it's
really
got to be like
creative...
a series of unfortunate events, if you will.
Yeah, it can't just be like you like taking a bath and then something falls in. I feel like that's too boring for.
I feel like this conversation has gone completely off the rails. Let's
okay. Sorry, guys. Okay, let's move on to what we've been reading. HT, you are the only one of us that has been reading and educating yourself this week. So tell us, what have you been reading?
Yes, I joined this subscription called Book of the Month, which is a subscription service that you get a new book monthly. You get sent it in a package, and it's usually a hardcover or paperback book. And it's one of the new releases of the month. And each month you get like a choice of 5 books with little synopses and little descriptions of the genre and what kind. If you like this book, will you like this book kind of thing. And you get to choose one, and you can roll over your credits to another month. And my friends and I are actually joined this all together so we can do this a sort of semi-book club, even though we've been all too busy to actually read our books. But the first book I received is the January book, which I haven't finished yet or really started, but it's called The Removed. It's by Brendan Hobson, and it's a family drama about this Native American family who live on a reservation, and the eldest son in this family died from a police shooting, and it takes place several years after his death. And it's this combination of family drama meets sort of Cherokee folklore, dream tale, and the interweaving of those kind of two genres. And it's really great. It's very, very heavy so far, but it's a fantastic, I think, debut book from Brendan Hobson. And this is a subscription service that I've been curious about too, because it mostly highlights new authors and new books, which is something that I have kind of fallen behind on. I mostly have just been tinkering and older books or classics that I've been wanting to catch up on. So this is a fun way of keeping up with new books and newer releases, and keeping up with the whatever's going on in the book world these days. So that's The Removed by Brendan Hobson, and it's good so far.
Wait, so who is choosing which book is the book of the month?
We all kind of look at the books together. And usually it's just a collection of 5 books that they give out to all their subscribers, or like that they describe to all their subscribers. And we look at them and we kind of just vote on which one we want to do. So it's a pretty informal process, but it's exciting. I'm excited to finish it and talk about it with my friends.
But who chooses the 5 options too? Is like I like wonder like how is this formulated? Like who is the editor here that is like choosing like here's the 5 books for this month?
I don't know. Whoever is running the company, I suppose, and curating it, it's well curated. It's a very like nicely designed website that gives bite-sized descriptions of these books and kind of gives you a sense of what they're like. So whoever's running it is doing a good job. I didn't do enough research to find out who is running it. So
I will say, as someone who used to be a member of this before my unread book pile got even bigger than it should be, they do reprint the books, usually on different paper stock with like a special logo for the book of the month on it. So I think it's whatever deals they can make with certain publishers. Depends. I think that dictates what 5 books are available.
Ah, and is it more affordable than if you like went to Amazon and bought the book?
I can't say it's always more affordable, but I used it for about a year. It was great. It was just once a month. You pay your subscription and you get to go pick a book, and it was really fun. I'm not sure if affordability is your thing. Maybe not, but it's like a window into what's hot, what's popular, what are people reading. It was really useful for that reason. But like I said, it's just a matter of can you keep up with that. And for me, it was an issue of getting a new book every month on top of the books I buy from Amazon once or twice a week just because I want them. So it ended up not being worth it for me, but it is a really cool service.
Well, yeah. Very cool. Okay, let's move on to what we've been watching. I think I mentioned last week or the week before that I had been watching some Apple TV Plus series that I was unable to talk about because of an embargo, and that series is For All Mankind season 2. I was a fan of the first season. This is the alternate history show. It the first season kind of took us through the Apollo era of space travel. What if the global space race never ended is basically the question to ask. What if Russia landed on the moon before us? How would that have changed history, innovations, politics, the world in general? And also the lives of these people that are, some of them are historical people that are famous and some are created solely for the show. The second season takes a fast forward nearly a full decade ahead to the 1980s. And the lead characters from the first season have kind of progressed into leadership roles and some other, there's stuff going on with them. There's some craziness going on this moon base that we have like installed in the first season. And it might lead to the first space war, a Cold War in space of sorts. Now, I guess like this season is basically asking now that the US military is becoming involved in this space project, what does that mean for the future of space exploration? What does that mean with our beef with Russia? How is this all going to escalate? Season 2 is more personal. It's a bit less pretentious than the first season. It's definitely darker. The budget feels bigger to meet the story's more ambitious circumstances. That said, some of the storylines, more personal storylines, seem like a little bit of missteps. I don't think I like this as much as I liked season 1, but it's still very good. I'm still very interested. I'm looking forward to season 3. I don't know where the show is headed, because at the rate that they're going, like, I guess season 3 might catch up to like now, maybe season 3, season 4. So it's like, I feel like Ronald Moore with the show is kind of forging his own alternate history into what he did with, Star Trek. But I guess it's probably not going to go to Star Trek, because how events are unfolding here, it doesn't seem like the ideals of Star Trek are at the focus here. And it's kind of how we would really deal with this if we were still forging ahead, like as we should have many years ago, with like us trying to explore space, try to colonize Mars, do all those things that I guess now Elon Musk is trying to do with SpaceX. But yeah, Jacob, I wanted to ask you on the air, like, why have you not watched this? I feel like this might be your jam. Like, it's not as positive as I think you like shows to be, but it is as complicated as I think you like these kind of things to be. And I know you're a big, like, space and sci-fi guy.
Yeah, I'm also a big Ronald Moore fan. I think his work on he worked in some of my favorite years of Star Trek, and he created Battlestar Galactica, the new version, which is phenomenal. But yeah, even his Trek tends to be the more pessimistic Trek, the Trek that questions, the mission of the entire universe. But yeah, I know this is probably a show I would enjoy. I love alternate history, and I love Moore's work. It's just a matter of how often I fire up Apple TV Plus. So it's a question of, it's not like lingering on my brain. Like, I don't fire up my Apple TV Plus very often unless I'm rewatching Ted Lasso. Then I see that in the corner and go, oh, I should watch that, as opposed to every other service where I'm constantly on them and constantly seeing what I need to catch up on. So you're correct. I would probably like this. I just need to be reminded of it enough times, probably.
By the way, Apple TV Plus, I think, like, emailed me a couple weeks ago. My subscription with the service had expired, because I got a subscription when I got a new iPhone a year ago, and it expired. And then they emailed me and they're like, "Oh, here, we're gonna extend your subscription by like a few months or something." So I don't think many people are probably watching Apple TV Plus because they're like, please watch our shows. But I don't know. I really like the show, and I Apple TV Plus has some good shows, and I feel like nobody knows it even exists, or if they know it exists, they just don't go to the app. It's interesting too, Jacob. I feel like you would connect with the show in the way that I sometimes do, where I'm watching an episode and a series of events happen involving some kind of interesting person or thing that happens, and I actually go on my phone to like, Wikipedia or Google to look up if like any of these characters or these situations were actually based on reality, and I learned that like some things that seem like they were just purely invented for the show were really based on actual things that happened. Maybe they didn't turn, maybe they played out in a different way than reality because of how the course of this history is going in a different direction. But I don't know. It's interesting to learn about real history from fake history, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I love it when any kind of writer does that. I love when it's good historical fiction, when this historical alternate reality where they just smudge it just enough to go off that track of actual history. That's actually the most intriguing thing you've said so far, Peter. It may actually push me onto this.
HD, what have you been watching?
So in the aftermath of Christopher Plummer's passing, I know a lot of people were watching a lot of his films, some more beloved than the others, and I decided to go back to one that is, very sentimental, very treacly, but one that I hold close in my heart, and that's The Sound of Music. And I haven't actually seen this since I was a kid. I used to have one of those VHS copies that had like the two tapes that were split in the intermission. By the way, we need to bring back intermissions to movies. And I know this is a conversation that happens every couple of months because movies are getting longer, but we really need intermissions back. And this movie isn't even that long compared to some of the biggest run times that we've had today. It's like 2.5 hours. And what Endgame was like 2 hours, 50 minutes. I don't remember. So, rant aside, I really, really love Sound of Music, despite how saccharine and sentimental and cheesy it is. I have memorized many lines of dialogue from that movie, as I realized as I was watching it again. But I did find myself being more interested and more invested in different aspects of the movie than I was as a kid. Like as a kid, I just wanted to watch Maria and the children sing about puppets and song notes. But this time around, I found myself more watching Christopher Plummer's performance, mostly because he was kind of the inciting incident for me watching this, but also being interested in the way that they seeded in some of the political undercurrents in the film and the anti-Nazism throughout. And Christopher Plummer is surprisingly fun in this role. I didn't realize it back when I first watched it, but he's really flirty and mischievous and just kind of like has this twinkle in his eye, which is far more different than the stoic character I remembered as a kid. And I really liked the just kind of the drama and the interactions that happened between the adults a lot more this time around, and was almost waiting for the songs to end so I can get to see more Christopher Plummer and Julie Andrews gazing at each other, which was always a lot of fun. Julie Andrews is an angel in this movie. She's magical, really. She's like on some sort of magical fairy dust in this performance. But it made me wonder too. I had a lot of thoughts while going through this 2.5 hour movie. Why it was The Sound of Music in particular that was that sort of universal film from almost everyone's childhood. I'm assuming that you guys all watched as kids. I might be making a wrong assumption, but everyone I knew growing up had at least seen Sound of Music once. It was like a staple in all of our childhoods, and everyone thinks about it, like refers back to it, and it's like heavily referenced in pop culture. And I wonder why it was specifically this film, because it was made in like 1965. So many other films that were made in that decade, even as big as they were, are less watched than Sound of Music is. Why do you think that is, guys? And am I wrong in assuming that it was a childhood staple for all of you?
HT, I didn't see it until college.
Okay, never mind then.
No, it was a childhood staple for me. I definitely grew up with this. And I think the answer to your question is probably because it's one of those movies that was broadcast a ton on, like ABC. It just became like a tradition where I think it was like every Christmas, and maybe it still even is, like every Christmas for years and years and years, this movie was on, and maybe like even multiple times, not quite to the level of a Christmas Story on TBS where it's like a 24-hour kind of thing, but maybe over the course of the holiday season, they would play it, once or twice or something. And I think because of the age, the period where it came out, and then like when TV's sort of, like when pop culture became the pop culture that we know it, today. I think it resonated with a lot of people who maybe saw it originally, maybe in theaters or something as kids, and then wanted to show it to the next generation. And then just so many generations growing up with it because, pop culture wasn't as splintered as it is now. And I think it was just like one of those sort of almost monocultural experiences that everybody had before. I don't think we're going to have something like that again. Outside of maybe Marvel movies or something, but especially for a film like The Sound of Music, I feel like that's probably where it came from.
Yeah, I was exposed to it as a kid. From my mom loved this movie, and she would have it on nonstop. And I think it made me hate the movie as a kid and hate musicals. It was that, but I was just doing the search on this when Ben was talking, and this movie did play for nearly 5 years in theaters during its original theatrical run, and then when I think Ben has hit the nail or hit the hammer on the nail or whatever you want to say, because it first aired on ABC in 1976, and ABC paid like $15 million, which is equivalent to like almost $70 million today, for a one-time only broadcast, and that broadcast got a 49% share on Nielsen, which if you understand Nielsen numbers, that means that 50% of America was watching that movie on TV, that had TV in the late 70s. So I think like this just became a thing that like it became a tradition on TV that like everybody kind of celebrated.
Wow. The more you know.
Yeah. I did want to ask you guys, like, what do you guys think about, because HT, you brought up the idea of intermissions. I want to talk about intermissions, but like those VHS tapes, they used to come in like multiple tapes. Like I remember Titanic had it.
I had that one.
Yeah, like what do you guys feel about that? Like, is there any nostalgia for the intermission that would be had from the double VHS tape of a movie?
Well, my wife and I just watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy on Blu-ray, and the extended edition, even on a Blu-ray, you have to pause and or stop the disc and like insert another one. So it's not just a VHS thing. That kind of thing is still sort of around, even for more modern movies.
Really? I didn't know that the Lord of the Rings movies were split by. Was that always the case, or is that like a new edition?
No, it's because I have the extended edition, the older Blu-ray, and it did it on that too. You had to switch discs, and they kept it for the new version as well.
I totally do not remember that, and I've definitely watched those on Blu-ray. Chris, what do you think of this? Is like this disruptive of the cinematic experience, or
no? I mean, I like the ideas for a long movie. I grew up in the era of VHS, and there was always something cool about those double VHS tapes. Like JFK had one, and I'm a big JFK fan, and I just loved that it had the two boxes and like The Godfather and stuff like that. But it's strictly a nostalgia thing. I'm not like I wish they'd bring those back, but I did enjoy it when I was a young lad back in the day.
It did kind of like enhance your expectations, right? Like when you saw that in the store or at like Blockbuster,
yeah, it made you feel like you were watching some serious shit. Like, oh man, this has two tapes. This is a real movie for adults.
Yeah. I feel like the same thing happened later on when they ended up having like multi-disc DVDs of a movie like with special features, but then everything ended up having like multi-disc, and then you had like Pearl Harbor has like 3 discs. It's like but yeah, like I feel like it did add a more epicness to the scale. Jacob, I feel like you must have an opinion on this.
Oh yeah, I very much believe what Chris said, which is when there was a WHS, it meant the movie was very big and important, and also led to me making some assumptions about movies. Like for years as a kid, I thought for sure that Oliver Stone's Nixon was one of the best movies ever made because it had 2 VHS tapes. And Oliver Stone's Nixon is not one of the best movies ever made, not even top tier Oliver Stone. But yeah, it really did sell the idea that, oh, this is a big deal. This is something that's exciting that the two rent. You're getting 2 tapes for the price of 1. Wow. And I guess now as adults, we know that a long movie doesn't necessarily mean a good movie. But yeah, the experience, the weight of carrying home double tapes from Blockbuster is something that streaming can never replicate.
I was so confused as a kid about these double VHS releases because my dad used to record like movies off of like HBO on television, and he'd record it in the what is it, extended play, the 6 hour, like where you get 6 hours on a VHS tape instead of like the normal like SP 2 hours or whatever. And I was like, well, why can't they just fit this onto one tape? Like, why are? Do we even know the reason? Is it because of quality? I guess we don't know.
I guess. Yeah.
I guess
I've always
so.
assumed that.
Oh no, I was always confused. It's like, do we really need 2 tapes for this movie? Like, I can fit 3 movies on my VHS tape at home. Okay, sorry, HD. We've gone off the rails. Partially because Brad's not here, so we have some more time to kind of chat and stuff. Yeah, that's how I'm going to excuse it. HD, what else have you been watching?
I also watched the latter half of High Society, and I say the latter half is because my roommate was watching it, and I kind of just walked in about halfway through and sat down and decided to watch the rest of it. And Ben has talked about High Society before. It's the musical version of the Philadelphia Story, which stars Bing Crosby, Grace Kelly, and Frank Sinatra. And I was very surprised to learn when watching the latter half of this movie that Bing Crosby was cast in the Cary Grant role as the ex-husband of Grace Kelly's character. And this really shocked me because Bing Crosby doesn't really have the same I guess the only word to say is like swagger as Cary Grant. And I wonder, I kind of felt like this was a piece of miscasting, although I do think that his characterization of the character was a bit more along the lines of a straightforward romantic role versus the sort of cad that Cary Grant plays. But Frank Sinatra, I do think that Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby could have switched roles and it would have been slightly better. Am I wrong in this, Ben? I thought it would have been so well done if like they switched it like that.
I never thought about that, but now that you mention it, I think you're 100% right. I think Bing Crosby has Jimmy Stewart energy, and I think he might have been a better fit for that role.
Yeah, he's got like this wholesome guy next door energy, and Frank Sinatra is kind of a cad too, so it would have been more fitting. But maybe they're trying to switch things up. I don't know. But yeah, High Society was basically word for word Philadelphia Story with more musical numbers. I do think that Grace Kelly's performance is not as fun as Katharine Hepburn's, but it does fit more into the characterization of her character as being sort of like that woman on a pedestal. So she fits that description more, but she's not as fun to watch as Katharine Hepburn. I really like the Philadelphia Story, despite my dislike for how the pairings turned out. But yeah, High Society, fun time. The next thing I watched was a movie that was not really of my choice. It was my friend's birthday, and we decided to do a Netflix party of Olympus Has Fallen, which I'd never seen before. My friend is a really big fan of scumbag action cinema of the Gerard Butler variety. And so we watched this movie. I was kind of half paying attention to it, but what a miserable movie this is. It's really dark and violent in a way that feels kind of unenjoyable, but it's almost impressive how hard they go with its action and with its violence and gore. And it was interesting watching this too in sort of the aftermath of the storming of the Capitol, because there is a whole like storming of the Capitol sequence here. The depictions of Koreans, of North Koreans and Asians in general are not great, but it's exactly what I expected this movie to be. Morgan Freeman and Angela Bassett are both in this movie, and I was I knew Morgan Freeman was, but I'm like, wow, how did they get both of these like high profile actors to kind of slum it for Olympus Has Fallen?
Paychecks. The answer is 6 figures minimum, probably 7.
Probably. But yeah, that's Olympus Has Fallen. I don't really have much to say about it. It's exactly what I
Did you
said.
take a shot every time that Gerard Butler stabbed somebody in the head?
I was going to say the exact same thing. We're waiting on the same joke, Ben.
Does anyone have any fond thoughts about Olympus Has Fallen, though?
It's dog crap. I mean, it was the same year as White House Down, which is the exact same movie, but pretty much better in every way.
I think I preferred Olympus Has Fallen at the time because it was like, I don't know, White House Down to me felt like a little bit too, like safe is the wrong word, but like sanded down a little bit. And that sort of excessive quality to it, to Olympus Has Fallen, sort of gave it a little bit of an edge in my book. But yeah, I have not revisited it. And I don't know if I would really almost be capable of revisiting it now, considering the events of earlier this year. Like, I feel like it would just be a very, very disconcerting rewatch in this era. But yeah,
I haven't seen Olympus Has Fallen, but I know White House Down. That was like Roland Emmerich, right?
Yeah, it's very much. I like White House Down because it has that Roland Emmerich tone, man. That sort of I'm taking this seriously, but I'm not aware it's goofy tone, and that's the tone that this material needs. Whereas Olympus Has Fallen is so dark and racist and upsetting, and its sequel even more so. Like the treatment of Asian characters in Olympus Has Fallen is terrible, and somehow they make it even worse for Middle Eastern characters in the sequel. Has
lovely.
Fallen. So I never saw a third one. Angel Has Fallen. I don't know which group they decided to target with that one, but these movies sum up Trump's America in a way that movies made last year, the year before really can't. I think they're really nasty, awful pieces of work.
I liked White House Down. I do feel like Emmerich's movies feel like they're made in the 90s still. Like he doesn't quite get the sensibilities of today. It has this cheesiness, which I'm guessing was what probably Ben didn't like about it. I haven't seen any of the Has Fallen series, but I was interested in seeing Olympus Has Fallen because I remember reading that they actually consulted with former Secret Service agents to like plan out the raid on the White House. Like they actually, the way it plays out in the movie is how they say it could possibly happen. But I guess that's not something I really want to watch now. Yes. So did you have anything more to say on that movie, HJ?
Not really.
No.
I'd be happy to move on from the subject.
Okay. Jacob, you've been rewatching the Saw movies.
Yes, all 8 Saw movies hit HBO Max. My wife's not seen them, so we were watching all the Saw movies one at a time. While drinking, of course, is our tradition with horror movies. And we watched Saw 1, Saw 2, and Saw 3. And I'm on the record that there are, out of the 8 Saw movies, there are 4 good Saw movies. They are Saw 4, Saw 3, Saw 6, and Saw 8, aka Jigsaw, are all the good ones. And the rest are for completionists only, although you need to watch them all to understand the story, because by part 4, the Saw story has gotten so complicated with so many characters and overlapping timelines that if you don't watch them in order, they become incredibly confusing. You don't know who's who or when's what and what's going on. But they're so strange because they're such a time capsule. I mean, it really is a throwback to the 80s where Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street were releasing a movie a year no matter what. And it was the idea that we pump these out every year, quality be damned. If quality happens, it's an accident. And that's kind of what makes those other 80s movies appealing in, decades later is, oh man, let's watch a whole bunch of these movies that are crammed out in one window and just compare them. And Saw is getting to that point, 16 years after their first movie. We've reached the era where even the bad Saws are now interesting. And it's really is fun to watch them because Saw 1 was a Sundance movie. It was James Wan's low-budget thriller, his introduction to the world. And in many ways, you can really see the seeds of James Wan's future films in it. And they really don't... Saw 1 is also a really small movie that feels very contained and realistic. By the sequel, they've thrown out the window. And by Saw 3, which is, of course, Lee Whannell, the director of Invisible Man, who turned into a terrific filmmaker, wrote Saw 1, 2, and 3. And by Saw 3, even he's like, screw it, we're going crazy. And Saw 3 is just full of wild, insane garbage, and I love it. But yeah, these movies, time has made them better. Time has made them interesting. At the time, it was just, oh my god, this is torture porn. Why are you watching this? Oh no, well, think of the children. And 16 years later, it's just a really interesting chapter in what are the horror movie tastes of right now. And for a number of years, Saw was leading the pack until Paranormal Activity stole its thunder and led the next 5 years of what people wanted out of horror movies. So I think Saw is a really interesting footnote. Not even a footnote; it's a chapter in the history of horror cinema. Chris, do you agree with me that 1, 3, 6, and 8 are the good ones?
I have conflicting thoughts on the Saw franchise. I never really got that much into it. 1 is definitely, I think, the best of the bunch, and it's interesting to watch 1 now because everyone thinks of Saw as this like ultra gory franchise, and the first movie really isn't that gory. The first movie is really vibing with the same sort of thing that 7 did, where most of the violence is sort of like hidden and it's more about atmosphere. And then all the sequels after that were like, all right, let's ramp up the gore. Let's change someone's lip to a car and drive the car and rip their face off. And none of that's really in the first movie. What I appreciate about the Saw franchise is how hard they tried to keep that continuity going. Like, they could have easily just been like, all right, fuck it, we're just going to have these films stand on their own. And they really, really tried hard. Even when it got like ridiculous, they were like, we got to keep the continuity. We got to keep, it gets to a point where all the sequels, they're constantly like cutting back to previous movies to explain how certain things fit in. And it makes zero sense. And I appreciate that, a lot of horror sequels, they give up on continuity and they're just like, screw it. No one cares about this. And the Saw franchise, they were really gung-ho about that. And probably because they were just constantly making them on top of each other. Like there was a period where they were literally coming out every year on Halloween, and it sort of forced them to be like, all right, we have to acknowledge the continuity because the previous movie is so fresh in everyone's mind. So while I never particularly loved Saw, and I'm a fan of everything else James Wan did after it, I do appreciate, what they were going for. I guess that's how I can put it.
Yeah, I guess to put a note on what Chris just said, it cannot be emphasized enough that Saw 4 takes place before, during, and after Saw 3.
That was such a mind-blowing reveal for me. I remember seeing that movie in theaters and like just being, like mixed on the first 3, but seeing that and being like, holy shit, do I love these movies now just because of like the audacity of that choice in Saw 4. And, it sort of never really recaptured that jolt of electricity that the 4th one gave me. But man, what an incredible moment.
It's almost like the Saw movies form a jigsaw puzzle.
They do. I really like the movies for the continuity and the interconnectedness. Like, I love when movies kind of have different storylines, like Pulp Fiction or Go, and then you find out that one storyline actually informs the other storyline from a different point of view later on. And I will say, and tell me if this is a hot take or not, Jacob and Chris, but I do think that these films play better now that you can kind of binge watch them on TV than they do in a yearly release schedule.
Oh yeah, I'd say so. I mean, they really do play like, the world's trashiest television show in a lot of ways. So I think that's 100% correct. I think it's the same way how binging Friday the 13th movies in 2021 is a lot more satisfying than it would have been in the 80s, where you have a whole year to wait on a really terrible Jason Takes Manhattan type movie. Whereas if he's binged them all now, it's like, oh yeah, this is just, what were they thinking at this year? Time for the next one. And I think the same thing applies to Saw. So I think you're accurate.
I will say, despite my sort of mixed reaction to the franchise, I am very excited for whatever it's called, Spiral from the Book of Saw, just because I'm very curious to see what that's going to be, because I loved how like that trailer was so serious, and I was like, yes, they're not even like winking at us. They're like, we're fucking taking this Saw movie very seriously with Chris Rock, and so I'm very excited about that.
Okay, Jacob, what else have you been watching?
I'm also rewatching Penny Dreadful. Chris talked about the show a few months ago, I think, maybe. Time's lost all meaning. But it's really good. It's on Netflix right now. And it's the Showtime series. It stars Eva Green, Josh Hartnett, Harry Treadaway, and Timothy Dalton. Is very sad supernatural detectives, essentially, in Victorian London. And essentially Universal Monsters, the show. Lots of gothic horror, vampires, werewolves, witches, extreme violence and gore, but also people being like super sad. Like it's a combination of a very astute period drama full of accurate costumes and period details and men and women being sad and coughing into handkerchiefs to show they're dying of, whatever they're dying of. But also just like completely rad monster stuff. So it's just this great overlapping circle, this Venn diagram of, do you like period dramas about sad people? Do you like stories about people hunting down monsters? Overlap, here it is, Penny Dreadful. It's great. HT, we talked about this offline, you and I. Penny Dreadful, I think, is something that you would really enjoy.
I think Chris recommended it to me too, because it does sound very, very up my alley. Like, wow, this show is made for HT. I will put it on the list that's in my head and isn't actually a list, but just names that pop up every now and then.
I will say that with only 3 seasons and 27 episodes, it's a very easy show to like knock out pretty quickly.
Oh, only 27 episodes. Okay. Wait, where is it streaming again?
It's a Showtime show, but it's streaming on Netflix right now.
Oh.
HT, watch the first episode. I promise you, the final few minutes of the first episode, you're going to be like, oh, fuck yes, this is the best show. Because that's like, I watched it, and like the final minutes of the first episode does this thing where even though it's predictable, you're going to be like, yes, I love what this show is doing, and you will be hooked, I promise.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll say that the end of the first one and the end of the second one like made me a fan. Those like the 2 endings of the first 2 episodes are weirdly linked in a way you'll see HT, and they said, okay, no matter what, I'm in this show for life.
Okay.
Real quick, before we move on, I have had the show in my queue for probably, 6 years or something, and just have not gotten around to watching it. Now that it's over, I mean, it's been over for a long time, but do you guys think that does it end in a satisfying way?
Yes.
It does. A lot of fans were angry with how it ends because it ends on kind of a down note, but it definitely wraps the story up, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, and it should be noted, at the time they ended it without announcing it was the ending. They said, "Oh, season 3 finale," and then it's a very definitive, "This show cannot continue." Sorry, ending. So and they had like interviews ready to go out at the time, saying like, "Yes, that was the ending. We chose to make it a surprise ending, not announce it." Like, it's the first time I've ever seen that in modern TV, where a prestige TV show let its actual ending happen without announcing it was an ending, and people were pissed. But it actually is it's
like the Walking Dead comics, right? Didn't that just happen like last year or something?
Yeah, they announced the last issue like a week in advance. It was wild.
That's such a.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say that's such a bold approach, and that sounds like something I would want to happen. But I'm guessing in reality, I really wouldn't want that to happen, because it kind of seems like a blindside in a bad way. No.
Yeah, I think it's good. It's a good question to have. Like when would it have the power it had at the time for fans if they knew this was the final season and final episode? They could build up knowing that anything can happen. Whereas the finale is an episode where anything can and does happen, but you don't know. Like, how do you get out of this? You can't. It's the end.
Another show that did that is The Nick, which is another show I recommend everyone watch, especially Jacob and HT. I don't know if either of you watched it, but I think
Nick rules.
I haven't seen it.
HT, you will love The Nick, so you should watch that too. But that did a similar thing where people didn't realize the ending was the very finite ending.
I have a question about the ending of Penny Dreadful. Does that include that series that they did with Natalie Dormer, Penny Dreadful City of Angels, or is that a different thing? Is that a spinoff?
It's like a completely different thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's canceled too. Nobody watched it.
Yeah.
Although I kind of wish it had taken off. I think the idea of a different horror series, in different eras, different locations, is a really cool idea. But even I, who dug Penny Dreadful a lot, like I had no interest in anything from that show. And Chris, did you even watch it? I know I didn't.
No, I mean, what appealed to me about Penny Dreadful, well, 2 things. One is Eva Green, obviously, and she's not in
Obviously.
that sequel series. And 2 is just I love that Victorian setting. Like I wasn't really interested in I think it's like 1920s, 1930s Los Angeles,
50s, I think.
50. I was way off there, but it's definitely it's more modern, and I just really wasn't that interested in that. I wanted that that London fog, everything's wet and grimy and shadowy sort of vibe. I didn't really, I don't really want a modern version of that, but that's me.
And I will say this much. Ben and H need to watch this so we can start sharing Eva Green gifs, because no actress is more committed to making such deranged faces as Eva Green in Penny Dreadful. Every face she has in every scene is a gif waiting to happen. She's an incredible actress. She has no vanity when it comes to looking horrible on screen, and she's digging into it, and she's so much fun.
And that's available now on Netflix. You said all 27 episodes?
Yep, all 3 seasons.
It's crazy that there's 27 episodes over 3 seasons. Remember when we would have to watch 24 episodes in a whole season of TV? Who thought that was a good idea?
Sometimes I want that though, Peter. Sometimes I do.
Okay, Chris, what have you been watching?
What have I been watching? Let me look at the doc.
I can tell you. You watched Battleship.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. I watched Battleship. So I have to preface why I watched Battleship. I have to explain myself here. So I have an elliptical machine, and when I do the elliptical machine, I watch movies, and I've found that I can't watch good stuff when I work out because I just get so wrapped up in the movie. I'm not giving it my all. I'm not working up a sweat. I'm not burning the calories I need to burn. So when I do the elliptical machine, I tend to watch junk. I watch stuff that I know is going to be trashy and stupid, and I don't have to, get swept up in the cinematography. So I saw that Battleship was on HBO Max, and I was like, this will be the perfect elliptical machine movie. And it was, because it is awful. What a stunningly bad movie this is. Obviously, it's based on the board game Battleship, and it's from Hasbro, who, obviously they made the Transformers movies, and it's plain as day that they were like, look, Transformers are making us tons of money on the big screen. Let's just make Battleship, and let's just basically make it a Transformers movie, because it has that same orange and teal color palette. It has that same just scenes where just CGI globs that you really can't decipher are smashing into other CGI globs. It's astoundingly stupid, and but I was never bored, and that that counts. That counts when I'm on the elliptical machine. Rihanna is in this. This is her movie debut. She, for some reason, her character never takes off her hat, and I can't figure out why. She wears a baseball hat the whole movie. I don't know if it's just a thing she wanted to do, but there's literally a scene where she falls off a boat into the the ocean, and she deliberately holds her hat on her head, and then she gets out of the water, and the hat is soaked, and she just doesn't take it off the whole movie. Doesn't take her hat off. Taylor Kitsch, I guess that's how you say his name, is in this. He is fucking terrible. Oh my god, what a bad actor. There's a scene where he watches his brother, and his brother is named Stone Hopper, by the way. That's the character's name, and he's played by Alexander Skarsgård. And he watches his brother explode, and it cuts to Taylor Kitsch's face after the explosion, and there's not a trace of emotion or acknowledgement. His eye doesn't even twitch. He's just looking into the camera. Do you feel anything because your brother just exploded, Taylor Kitsch? I don't know. You're a bad actor. Liam Neeson in the movie for 2 scenes, vanishes, shows up at the very, very end to remind you he's in the movie. The aliens look like humans, but they have these quills coming out of their chins that make them look like Abe Lincoln. It's just a disaster from beginning to end. So,
but Chris, what about the part where a bunch of 80-year-old veterans jump on a battleship and start blasting aliens while AC/DC is blaring?
That's the scene. That's the scene that makes this movie, Ben.
There are 2 different AC/DC needle drops in this movie, but yes, that's one. And not only that, there are also 2 different scenes where characters say motherfucker and it cuts away before the F word. They don't do that just once, they do it twice, where it's just shoot this mother, and it cuts to an explode, and it happened 2 times. You don't need that twice in your movie. Oh, what a fucking bad movie. Good Lord. Anyway.
Chris, tangential question. Have you seen Friday Night Lights?
The movie or the show? The answer is no to both. So no.
Well, the show is great. The heartbreak to see Jesse Plemons and Taylor Kitsch, who are both wonderful on Friday Night Lights and share a number of scenes. Seeing them reunited on the big screen in Battleship is really heartbreaking if you're a Friday Night Lights fan. So I'm glad you didn't experience that heartbreak too.
I mean, Jesse Plemons, great actor. This is the only bad performance I've ever seen from him. He's tasked with playing the funny guy, so he's always making jokes and none of them are funny. And they're also really racist, because there's a part where he's mocking the Chinese language, and it's why? What is going on with this movie? It's just so bad. Anyway, Battleship, now streaming on HBO Max. I can't recommend it enough.
This movie is extremely not boring. Chris is right. It is not boring in this. You will not be bored watching Battleship.
Right, because after this, I watched another elliptical movie, and I didn't put it on the list because I didn't really talk about that much, but it's Safe House, the movie with Denzel Washington and Ryan Reynolds. And that movie, it's better made. It's got a better script. And I was fucking bored to tears while watching it. So just goes to show you can have a better script for your movie, but it can still end up just being boring. I guess what Safe House needed was multiple AC/DC drops and characters saying motherfucker and getting cut off and Rihanna keeping her hat on. I guess that's what all movies need, really.
How do we feel about Peter Berg as director? Because I feel like there's some movies of his.
Send him to The Hague. That's what I think.
Really? Wow.
Stinks. He's a piece of shit. I don't care. Go to hell, Peter Berg.
There's some movies of his that I think are good. Like
what? Name one, Peter.
Well, first of all, I love Friday Night Lights, and I feel like that pilot is really a great pilot. I enjoy The Rundown. I don't think that's a good movie, but it's a fun movie.
I think he's a filmmaker who doesn't have personality, and I think that's the problem. Because to quote Pulp Fiction, personality goes a long way. Because, when watching Battleship, I kept thinking of Transformers, and those Transformer movies are a mess, but they have sort of a personality because of Michael Bay, and Peter Berg is sort of like this faceless, shapeless thing. He just goes and he points his camera and he collects a paycheck and he waves an American flag around, and that's really it.
I feel like you can tell a Peter Berg film. He has that kind of
because you're like, style. Turn this off.
He is Diet Coke Michael Bay. He really is Diet Coke Michael Bay, and I think that Friday Night Lights the movie is good. His pilot for Friday Night the TV series is great. It's maybe one of the great TV pilots of all time. But he's out of that show immediately after that. He's not back, and that show is taken over by a superb writing staff. So I think Peter Berg is looking at IMDb right now, Hancock.
Did you see Patriots Day? I liked Patriots Day.
I did not see that. I did see his most recent. What was that? Mile whatever 26. I don't know what it's called.
Mile 22. I also did Spencer Confidential, a movie that nobody saw. Well, I guess sorry, it's on Netflix, so everybody saw it, but nobody remembers it.
Mile 22 is one of the worst movies I've ever seen. It's stunningly bad. It's not even entertaining bad. It's very bad.
Looking at this, Lone Survivor is my least favorite Peter Berg movie. That movie is trash.
Yeah. I remember liking Very Bad Things, but I haven't seen that in many years.
Very Bad Things has its charms, but that's a small, nasty movie. And I think if he had sort of stuck with that instead of making these big, ultra patriotic messes, he would be better off.
Okay, Chris, let's move on to Greenland. Why did you watch Greenland?
Right. Speaking of Gerard Butler movies, Greenland. So I got sent the Blu-ray of this, and it's in my latest Blu-ray column, which I urge you to read because I'm sure no one does. But I thought I knew what I was getting into with this because it's a Gerard Butler movie. It's a disaster movie. It's about a comet that's crashing into Earth, and I thought it was going to be basically, Olympus has fallen, but with a comet. Because. Nothing against Mr. Gerard Butler. He's very good at what he does, but what he tends to do is trash. So I was expecting trash. And I got to tell you, this movie is surprisingly good, and it's surprisingly effective because even though it's a disaster movie, it's very low key. Yes, there are scenes where, there's shots where pieces of a comet crash into cities and blow shit up, but is really more of this human drama. The setup is there's a comet, it's going to crash into Earth. Gerard Butler is this high profile structural engineer, and the government, they don't really say who, I guess it's the US government. They're relocating people to these bunkers in Greenland, and certain people have been selected to go to the bunkers to help rebuild society after the comet crashes. And because Gerard Butler is so good at building things, the logic is, we need this guy to help rebuild the planet. So he gets selected, and he and his family, they go to this military base to get on a plane to fly to Greenland, and a series of events happens that keeps them from getting on the plane. And then things get worse when they get separated. Gerard Butler gets separated from his wife and daughter. And so they all have to find their way back to each other, and then they have to find a way to get to Greenland, to get to the bunker. And the movie portrays all this in this sort of hyper realistic way where the entire time you're watching it, you're like, if there was a comet that was going to crash into Earth, this is pretty much exactly the chain of events that would be happening. And, I turned this on late at night thinking I was going to get like this dumb, mindless action movie. And the movie ended up giving me like this existential crisis where I felt like I was like having a panic attack at times because it's so good at portraying just how things will fall apart really quickly in situations like this. And like there's this part where like they cut to a TV screen and it's like a military guy being interviewed by CNN or something, and they're talking about how the military is trying to keep order, but the comet's going to crash into Earth in like 24 hours. And the military guy is like, we're doing the best we can, but we know in a few hours it's all going to be for nothing. And like just hearing it like just spelled out like that bluntly, I was like, Jesus Christ, this movie is very upsetting. Because like when you watch disaster movies like Independence Day and so on, they don't really stop to think about how many thousands of people are going to die. It's really just about, look at how fun all these explosions are. And there's nothing wrong with that. Those are very entertaining movies, but this is the opposite of that, where it's all about the human toll. And I'm shocked that this is a Gerard Butler movie, because like I said, I was expecting junk. So if you're sort of on the fence about like, another shitty Gerard Butler movie, I really urge you to check out Greenland, because it's a million times better than it has any right to be.
I don't believe this, Chris.
I'm telling you the truth.
You want to see this movie.
I'm telling you, you will like it. It's very well made. It's very effective. Gerard Butler is really good in it. It's a good movie. So Greenland.
Yeah. It wasn't originally going to be Gerard Butler. It was originally supposed to be Chris Evans, and it was what's his name directing? District 9. Neil Blomkamp. Yeah, Neil Blomkamp was originally going to be the director. So I'm sure that would have been more the movie you're thinking of, or thinking it was going to be. I don't know, actually.
But yeah, I really recommend this. It was a I don't want to call it a pleasant surprise, because like I said, it made me upset, but it was a surprise nonetheless. And then finally I watched Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, which is a new movie that's coming out on VOD this week. And it's Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumlo, who they both wrote Bridesmaids together, and they're both in this movie, and they both wrote this movie. And oh man, this is a delightful, silly movie. This is basically a Muppet movie, but all the Muppets are played by humans, and I kind of think that's exactly what they're going for, because there's a scene where they directly reference the first Muppet movie, and I kind of think like Kristen Wiig and Annie Mumlo were like, let's write a Muppet movie without Muppets, and it has that same sort of just like silly goofball energy where like there are absolutely zero stakes, and it's just about laughing at how absurd everything is. And this is just relentlessly silly. There's barely a plot. They play women in their 40s who get fired from their job at Jennifer Convertibles, and they decide to go to Florida. And meanwhile, there's this supervillain who's also played by Kristen Wiig, who is planning to unleash killer mosquitoes into this place in Florida where they're going, Vista Del Mar, because when she was a kid, she got made fun of by the people there. So her plan is to just kill everyone there with killer mosquitoes. And Jamie Dornan plays like her henchman who's in love with her, and he goes there to execute the plan, but he falls in love with the other character played by Kristen Wiig, and it's just so fucking silly. And it was like exactly what I needed to see, because you don't have to think too much about it. You just sit back and you laugh at how stupid it is. And I'm saying stupid in a loving way. It's not like, oh, that was stupid. It's like, that was stupid, and I enjoyed how stupid it was. There are multiple musical numbers, and all the songs are just relentlessly dumb. There's like a talking crab. Andy Garcia shows up for one scene. It's a delight. I think it's coming to VOD this weekend. And if you're looking for something to take your mind off of literally everything and just laugh, I really recommend this.
Chris, Brad and I have talked about this off the show, about how the trailer looks like in some alternate dimension, these two were SNL characters who finally got their MacGruber or their Hot Rod. Is that an accurate description?
Maybe, I guess, but it's even like dumber. That, I mean, like, the thing, I guess this does remind me. It has that same sort of energy as MacGruber, and it has like a Austin Powers vibe to it, I guess. But I really think like the Muppets is like the closest. Like I'm talking like the early Muppet movies where the Muppets were all the main characters, and they were like the humans were just in the background. Like that's what this is, but there are no Muppets, if that makes sense.
You've just sold me on this for VOD. I'm renting this the day it's available. This sounds wild.
You will not regret it. Trust me. You're gonna laugh, and that's all that matters.
I think I saw the trailer for this like one of the last times I was in a movie theater, and I was like, "What is this? What is going on here?" And this is directed by the guy that did that documentary. What was it? Too Funny to Fail. Too Funny to Fail: The Life and Death of the Dana Carvey Show. And he's done a bunch of like TV stuff like New Girl and Fresh Off the Boat. I'm gonna add this to my list.
Yeah,
so
everyone watch it. You're gonna laugh. But Barb and Star go to Vista Del Mar, and it'll be on VOD this Friday, February 12th.
Yeah. Ben, what have you been watching?
My wife and I finished our rewatch of Lost. We've watched the finale last night, and it's just as great as it has always been. Season 6, though, it's been a long time since I've rewatched the show, and I forgot how rough huge portions of that 6th season really are. In my mind, it was all like, oh, it's, Sawyer and Miles, like a buddy cop kind of thing. Like that's most of the season. And that's really like, I don't know, like 4 scenes and over the course of like 16 episodes or something. There's so much of like just this slog across the island and to the temple and Dogen and his interpreter and like all of this stuff that is just like really dull. And Saeed gets like drowned and then brought back, and they really do a lot of the characters kind of nasty in that season. But I really do think that the show culminates and sort of concludes in the best possible way that it could, and I still was just blown away by the emotionality of that finale and how well almost every decision in that finale really works. So Lost, still a great show. I mean, it's a more complicated show than I remember it being, and maybe a little bit slightly more flawed than I remember it being, because I've sort of built it up in my mind as like this is one of the end all be all TV shows. It's still, I think, one of the best shows of all time, just in terms of the structure and the overall narrative and the way that they were able to introduce new players into the mix and keep mysteries going and just like tell propulsive stories and make it propulsive stories with an incredible background and make it look and feel incredible and vibrant and just like the super well paced. But yeah, that last season, man, there's some there's some bumps before you get to the glory of that finale.
Squirrel baby Claire.
Oh yes, yeah. That's one of the characters that I feel like they really. I mean, it's so clear now that like the Damon Lindelof who exists currently, who oversaw Watchmen, would never write a character the way that he wrote Claire, where like her entire personality is just pregnant and like that's it. So yeah, there are definitely some shortcomings there, but it's sort of interesting to look at as a cultural artifact from what I mean. The finale aired 11 years ago, so it's man, what a hell of a show. So Lost, the whole thing is on Hulu right now if you'd like to dive in or rewatch or what have you.
I love that we're a pro Lost podcast even after all these years. That even I think the ending's bad, but the show overall is still so great and so important. And I like that we all like Lost. That's why I like all of you. If we didn't like Lost, we couldn't be colleagues. So.
I will disagree with you, Jacob, though. I think that last episode is a good episode. I think this final season is not a good season, like I think Ben is alluding to. The first 2 episodes, I remember they had this like first 2 episodes. It was like airport. It was like LAX or something. I remember that being solid. I remember there being an episode like in the mid-season that was like about Richard Alpert's character.
Avatarno.
Yeah, and then the final episode was good, but the rest of this season I think was trash for me. Like I love Lost, but this final season with the Flash sideways, I don't know, it just did not work for me.
I remember one of the first articles I wrote that gained actual traction, like in my on the internet, and minor traction, was I wrote a reaction post, God, so many years ago, to the Man in Black flashback episode revealing the origin of the Smoke Monster and the Man in Black and all that. Is Man in Black the character I'm thinking of, Ben?
Yes. Yeah.
And goodness gracious, what a colossal failure of an episode to satisfyingly explain anything about key parts of that show's mythology. But the fact that last season of Lost broke my heart so hard, but the fact that I still love Lost and consider it a good, dear friend who I want to revisit often, is a testament to how good Lost is. What a special show.
Yeah,
really
for
is.
sure. Okay, so then I also rewatched Rope, the Alfred Hitchcock movie from 1948. I don't remember if we've talked about this on the podcast or not. Have you guys seen Rope?
I have.
Oh yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. This is the one that has the kind of gimmick that it's like one continuous
shot.
take, but isn't.
Yes.
Yeah, where they keep zooming the camera in on like shirts and stuff.
Yeah, like or like the chest, and then like it cuts.
Don't
It's like
pay
a
attention.
brief blackness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's man, it's a really interesting movie. It's like so I think Hitchcock is sort of known for these like mystery plots, right? Like these thriller movies, and this one I love just how it opens with this guy screaming, and you see these two guys just choking him to death with a rope. And it's like the opposite of a whodunit. Like the movie just comes right out in front and says, like, these are the people who did this. These are the people who committed this crime. Now the entire movie is just going to be about whether or not they get caught. And like, it's all about, just the like overconfidence and just entitlement and really like drippingly disgusting arrogance of especially one of the killers, and just how he is just constantly like alluding to this body that is inside this apartment where they're hosting this party, and just making all of these double entendres and like little references throughout the whole thing, and just trying to basically like come as close to getting caught as possible, just because he sort of gets off on it. And I think the most interesting thing about this movie, or rewatching this movie now, is Jimmy Stewart's character, who is this like he was an old professor of the two killers who are like in their, I think, college age era, and Jimmy Stewart's character, I guess, kind of like taught these guys everything they know about like the idea of there is such a thing as the perfect crime, and that is for people who are superior to just murder anybody that they consider to be, or that society considers to be inferior to them. And like murder in that way is like justified and like totally fine and right. And that's what Jimmy Stewart's character sort of like, proclaimed to these kids. And they like took him at his word. And then when, spoilers for Rope, this movie from 1948, so I'm going to give you guys just a second to skip ahead, grab your podcast players and skip ahead if you've not seen this movie, which I would recommend you do. At the end of the movie, when Jimmy Stewart realizes that they've killed this guy, and they try to explain like, hey, this is just something that you should understand this. You of all people should understand this. He sort of has this moment of shock where he's like, I can't believe that you would take my words and just do what I say. And it reminded me so much of what's going on in American politics right now. And like, we're talking about the storming the Capitol earlier and all of that. Like just thinking about it through that lens, it's really kind of a weird thing to think about, of Jimmy Stewart's character just being like, yeah, I said this stuff, but I didn't think that you were going to really do it. And like what the responsibility he bears in this situation is, and how much these other people, bear, and how that responsibility is shouldered and spread, and the sort of insanity of the mindset of like, who gets to decide, who is superior to somebody else, and like that it's okay to just murder someone because you think you're better than them. Man, what a what a movie. So I would recommend it now. It's sort of a fascinating rewatch through that prism.
I haven't seen this movie since like I was a kid, and when I was a kid, I was more fascinated with how it was shot than the story. But now hearing you talk about the story, it makes me want to revisit it. But I do remember hearing, because these cameras back in the day were like very heavy, like heavy like nowadays you can film a one take movie. I don't want to say easily, but a lot more easily. You have, you're not dealing with film, you're dealing with video. The camera sizes are much smaller. And I remember reading that at one point in the movie, like, because they have these long takes and no one wanted to be responsible for ruining a take because it costs a lot of money. The film costs a lot of money. The time costs a lot of money. And at one point, like, one of the cameramen like had his foot rolled over. It was on the dolly track, and the dolly rolled over his foot, broke his foot, and he had to gag himself, and then people dragged him off set.
Wow.
So that they didn't ruin the shot.
Jeez, man, that is intense.
Yeah. Anyways, sorry. What else have you been watching?
The final thing that I watched a film called Meet Me in St. Louis for the first time. I don't know, HT, this seems like something you might have grown up with. Are you familiar with this movie?
I actually haven't seen it. I was considering to watch it this Christmas. Because it is a Christmas movie, so you're kind of coming to it a little late.
I know, yeah. I didn't even realize that it was a Christmas movie. I had recorded it off of Turner Classic Movies, I guess around that time, because Ben Mankiewicz did an intro to it and was like, part of our Christmas lineup this year is Meet Me in St. Louis. I was like, oh, okay, all right then.
Yeah, it's where Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas originated.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about. So that's like maybe the most notable thing about the song. I mean, the music is great. So Judy Garland plays a member of this family, and the plot is basically like she falls in love with the boy next door, this neighbor who just moved in, and the whole movie is basically about her sort of like maneuvering and trying to get him to notice her, and those two characters like getting together, and then it's like family drama that sort of plays out over the course of multiple seasons. So the movie is sort of broken up into 4 different like seasonal vignettes almost, and the movie is called Meet Me in St. Louis, and St. Louis was the location of the World's Fair in 1904. So that's when it's set. The World's Fair is sort of the backdrop for the movie and the like final destination of the movie. And yeah, Judy Garland is great in it, and she, I had not seen too much of her work aside from like the super, big classic kind of Wizard of Oz level movies. But I need to go back and seek out a lot of her work as an actress, because I mean, her voice is just so incredible, and the standards and the songs that she sings in this movie are really moving and like energetic in some places. There's the trolley song, which I think at the time was like a more well-known track than or became more well-known instantly than Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas. But that is the song that that originated in this movie and has now become just like so much a part of the fabric of the American celebration of Christmas that it feels like it's always existed, and like nobody ever came up with that song. It just sprang forth from the ether, the Christmas ether or whatever. But just watching her sing that song, which is like really melancholy, and it's the sad moment where she thinks that her family is going to have to move away, and she's trying to comfort her younger sister in this moment where she's just really, the younger sister is really torn up about like leaving everything that she's known in her entire life behind, and Judy Garland like reckoning with this idea of like having to put this relationship on hold, or maybe not be able to pursue it at all, and singing Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas with its original lyrics is just such a heart like rending gut punch of a scene. And it's so wild to think that like audiences at the time were just hearing that song for the first time. It's just really, I don't know, kind of wild to think about. And even something like like White Christmas. HT, I remember you talking about watching White Christmas for the first time around the Christmas season this past year, and that's a movie that I grew up with. But the same kind of thing happened with that, where like Bing Crosby sang White Christmas. I think technically he sang it in a movie called Holiday Inn, which came out like right before that. But that's another one of those songs that just feels like it's always been a part of the pop cultural lexicon around Christmas. But just thinking about how crazy it must have been for people to like be bowled over by this song for the very first time, and then just it slowly becoming, like weaving its way into that fabric is just kind of a something that I don't get to experience very often, because I'm not watching super old stuff that has anything on on that level of like cultural permeation, I guess. So I would recommend Meet Me in St. Louis. It's a fun movie. It reminded me a lot of Little Women, HT, and I think you would like it in that regard too, not only in the sort of like vignette aspect of it, but also just like the dynamics between the sisters and the family, and the sort of like interpersonal relationship stuff there too. So Vincent Minnelli directed this, came out in 1944, and it is called Meet Me in St. Louis.
Very cool. And I think that brings us to the end of today's Slash Film Daily. You can find more of all of our work at slashfilm.com. You can find this podcast on Apple, Google, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps. Please send us your feedback, questions, comments, concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. And please head on over to our iTunes page, write us a 5-star review, write us like one line or two, tell us what you like. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Peter, I've opened up the gargantuan book of insult, offense, and effrontery, sharp retort for posts, caustic quips, implant put-downs by Louis A. Safian. Are you ready? The answer is yes. Okay, page 257, the Do Nothings section. Do Nothings. Peter, talk about occupational hazards. He had a narrow escape. He was offered a job when he reported to pick up his unemployment check. Do I need to read it again, Peter?
I really didn't okay.
Yeah.
Talk about occupational hazards. Peter had a narrow escape. He was offered a job when he reported to pick up his unemployment check.
Oh, okay.
Well, HT, she's known as the NYU woman, New York unemployed.
That's me. 'Cause I'm in New York.
And Ben, he's made a career out of collecting unemployment insurance.
That's not even
only a do nothing would do.
I was going to say, like, that's not even a joke. I mean, I guess it is, but
Chris, he can fall asleep even while running for a bus.
I sure can. I'm so tired.
Peter, do I need to read yours again? I feel like
No. Okay, that's
muted.
it. I hope you all have a wonderful Wednesday.
Talk about occupational hazards.
No.
He had a narrow escape. He was offered a job when he reported to pick up his unemployment check.